What's going on, everybody? Backseat Economist here, Austin Lewis. Big shout out to our new and hopefully soon to be added on to UK followers who are already members or sponsors of the UK version of the Backseat Economist, which the two of us have merged. So I will be heading the US market aspect of the economic channel and probably also a little bit of the UK as well. And then my partners over across the pond there will be helping out to cover the UK side. So today I wanted to get into a little bit, a lot of it actually, about Joe Biden's remarks, the presidential speech he made regards to the economy about 3-4 days ago. I believe it was on last Friday. And I'm going to get into it here. We're just going to have a nice little evening here. We're going to just basically listen to what he has to say, and I'm going to try and fact check as best I can if he needs to be fact checked, and go based off of the numbers, not based off of any opinions, including his, mine, or anybody else's, but what the actual numbers say. And I'm using the Bureau of U.S. Labor Statistics mainly, and also the Bureau of Economic Analysis and the WhiteHouse.gov economic analysis page as well.
Vaccination efforts that save lives helped our economy recover from the lost jobs during the pandemic. 10 million jobs created.
That's true. 10 million jobs have been created in our recovery efforts from the pandemic. But funny thing is that matches up very nicely with what's estimated to be about 10 million jobs lost due to the pandemic.
A record for any administration at this point in the presidency.
It's a record, though.
3.5% unemployment, 50-year low.
3.5% unemployment. Okay, so he's been talking about this for quite some time, the unemployment rate. I've talked about it before in my other videos. The unemployment rate is about 3.5%. That's a great stat to throw out there. The problem here, and I've said this many times before, is what is the labor force participation rate looking like? That is how we really kind of assess how many people are actually pursuing employment, right? And this number is important because what you can do here is to manipulate these numbers to show a smaller unemployment when it could really be a result of less people searching for work. So the labor force participation rate basically takes all eligible working adults, and then it takes the ratio of them who are actually searching for employment. So that's people that are actually applying for work or have actually been gainfully employed at some point in the last 6 months, right? And if you have not done one of those two things, you are not actually considered a part of the labor force, right? And so the labor force participation rate says that right now we're at about 62%, 62.4% of our working eligible adults actually participating in the labor force, right? So as that ratio decreases, well, of course, right, you're going to see less people unemployed because we're using a total aggregate less number of people to calculate that number with, right? So the less people who we actually use to calculate that number, because people are actually dropping out of the labor force, the lower the unemployment rate will go. And the labor force participation rate is at an all-time low, 62. It's been in the 62s basically since Joe Biden has taken over. It was in the 63s during Trump, and 62s every here and there, every other quarter, which is not good. It actually started to increase a little bit in Trump's last couple of years, and then of course the pandemic hit, and that just got shattered.
50-year low, 700,000.
50-year low.
700,000 manufacturing jobs created, with companies investing billions of dollars to build industries of the future here in America. Proving that made in America is no longer just a slogan. We're rebuilding our roads, our bridges, our ports,
probably going to speed up through this whole spot.
We're delivering clean water. The price of gas
Except there, clean water. We're delivering clean water to every American. So it's estimated that 2 million Americans don't have access to safe drinking water. That situation has not improved, right? I mean, we've seen things like Flint, Michigan, which is still trying to be improved. There's still problems with that water in Flint. We're going on almost probably 10 years now. There's places like Kentucky, South Carolina, I know Virginia just had an issue where it was found out that they were using treated wastewater to help supplant the lack of access to clean drinking water. So it's nowhere near every American, as he claims, has access to clean drinking water. It's actually, I believe it's thought to be about 130 million Americans are using water systems that violate the Clean Water Act. So big issues here, and it's estimated that about $1 trillion needs to be given by the government or invested by the government over the next 25 years to actually totally fix and make it so that his claim is true, so that we actually do have all Americans having access to clean drinking water.
Down. It's down $1.20 since this summer, and this
gas prices are down, but it was his making in the first place, so no need to even stop and address that.
In a responsible way.
You made it higher, and now you're slowly lowering it.
That this year,
Congratulations.
The deficit fell by $1.4 trillion. The largest one-year drop in American history. $1.4 trillion decline in the deficit.
All right. So I've spoken about this before. There's some kudos to throw out here, and there's obviously some, we all have eyes, we all have ears. We know that the economy's not feeling great right now. There are some kudos to throw out here, and there are some criticisms to make in regards to that number, that $1.4 trillion deficit decrease that he throws out there. First and foremost is most of that decrease is directly related to these COVID stimulus programs starting to drop off and no longer be funded, which thank God, right? Because it seemed like for a while that these were going to go on in perpetuity, that the government was going to just get, effectively the American people were going to get hooked on these stimulus programs and be using COVID as a nonstop excuse to continue to shell out money. And they actually are starting to end. So I will give him kudos for that. He is allowing many of these programs to end. Moving on though, the revenue that he is anticipating, and that's mainly due to this Inflation Reduction Act. He's anticipating a lot more revenue incoming into the government, and he's attributing that to part of the reason why the reduction in the deficit is happening. Like I said, it's mostly due to these COVID stimulus programs expiring. I've had another video, right? I've done a lot of videos at this point, but my Inflation Reduction Act video goes right into those numbers about how they're calculating this deficit reduction that they plan to have result from this Inflation Reduction Act. And I've poked holes all in it. The biggest hole I've poked is this whole idea that the healthcare savings that they are somehow including in their numbers as government savings are not actually government savings, right? Some of the Trump era rebate rules that they want to expire, those were actual savings. So this was a part of the healthcare savings plan and the Inflation Reduction Act in the Trump era rebate rule. That was going to save, I believe, about $122 billion. Those Trump era rebate rules were also expected to save consumers. There was a reason why they were implemented by the Trump administration. They were expected to save the consumers $89 billion. So you're ending a program that actually was put into effect to accomplish the same goal, which was to lower prescription drug prices. And what he is trying to say is that the lowering of these prescription drug prices, now that Medicare can negotiate for prescription drugs, he's basically claiming, and the administration is claiming, that the fact that they're able to do that is going to actually save them billions of dollars, which is not true, right? It's going to save the consumer, the actual participants of Medicare and Medicaid. It's going to actually save them from higher prescription drug prices, but it's not going to save the government any money. They're basically spending this money to make sure that we can save money, which is not a terrible idea. I think most people would agree prescription drug prices are out of control, but this is not a saving that the U.S. government is going to be able to enjoy.
Repeat that. The largest ever decline in the federal deficit.
Let me be clear. This record deficit reduction includes the cost of my student loan plan and everything else we're paying for. The deficit is down $1.4 trillion this year, even after accounting for 30 years of debt relief paid in advance. Now, this follows last year's drop of $350 billion in the deficit. And because we're making sure the largest corporations pay their fair share, cracking down on billionaire tax cheats and giving Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices in the future, just getting underway. which lowers one of the biggest costs that government and families have to pay. We'll reduce because of that the deficit another $250 billion over the next 10 years.
We're going from historically strong economic recovery to a steady and stable growth while reducing the deficit. Building an economy where everyone does well.
All right, so before we get to that point, I do want to talk about what the economy looked like prior to COVID and these Trump-era tax cuts. So the reason why we are looking at right now a increase in revenue, which we do see. There's an increase in revenue since Biden has taken office. And this basically came about when Trump did his tax cuts, which were suspect at best. Basically, his idea, I mean, at the end of the day, it's an idea that he had. And basically it was famous idea by the Republican Party, cut the corporate tax rates, cut the tax rates that affect the rich, aka the job makers. They will then want to expand business. You're incentivizing them to expand, hire more workers, produce more products, and therefore that'll start to trickle down to the rest of the average consumer, the average participant in our economy. So we didn't really have enough time to see if that was ever going to be true because they were basically immediately undermined once Biden got in. But those Trump-era tax cuts basically were thought to be able to pay for themselves. And this was predicated on us getting at least a 3% average annual GDP growth year over year, which has not actually happened. And obviously, again, COVID, right? So big wrench was thrown in that plan there. But even if it had worked out, it's widely theorized by most economists that the plan would have at best have paid for itself. $2.3 trillion was spent on Trump-era tax cuts, and at best, around $2.3 trillion would have been taken in. The big idea here for Trump was that the GDP growth would far exceed 3% year over year. And therefore, basically, what he's doing now is cutting the rates for those that make the jobs, own the corporations, in hopes that when they expand, we will continue to grow faster than 3% a year, and then the government itself will be able to tax those gains and continue to enjoy higher revenue. But in the interim, in the meantime, we're going to be taking in less revenue because of those tax cuts, and we did. Revenue fell. Actually, individual tax returns went up, so the average consumer, me, you, we actually saw higher tax rates under Trump. We were taking in less corporate tax revenue, and there was actually higher Medicare and Social Security taxes as well. Again, these are all stats, right? These are not feelings or opinions. So none of Trump's tax cuts would have actually went into reducing the deficit. At best, they would have paid for themselves, and the deficit would have remained the same. And we both know that it wouldn't remain the same because it continues to increase every year. So Biden's claim that what he has done has reduced the deficit is partly true. He has increased revenue, right? And you could put that towards the idea that more people are back to work, so there's more revenue coming in, period. Probably a big part of it. He has decreased spending. COVID-19 stimulus and loan programs have expired. So these are all things that he more or less inherited than created. And one thing that he did create was an immediate way to spend that money. And I talked again about this in my other video on the Inflation Reduction Act, but any savings that they had calculated from the Inflation Reduction Act were quickly spent. It's estimated that the student loan forgiveness program is going to be about $300 and $980 billion, right? So we don't even know the exact cost of that. So for him to make the claim that he's taken into this analysis, this saving, this deficit saving, he's taken into account the student loan forgiveness program is not possible because we have no idea. The expected ranges of what it's going to cost is $300 to almost $1 trillion, $300 billion, almost $1 trillion. So there's no way he's calculated that. He's just kind of flapping his gums there. But he can make the claim about reducing the deficit. It is technically true. We all, like I said, have eyes. We know it's not because of his actions. In fact, he's found ways to continue the spending by sending all kinds of money to Ukraine, upwards of almost $50 billion at this point. And again, the $300 to $980 billion student loan forgiveness plans. Equality amongst all classes, I'll let you be the judge of that. Basically, all signs point to the income inequality and wealth inequality gap constantly raising throughout all administrations for the past 50 years. So, I'll let you be the judge of that one. I think we all would agree that nothing significant has changed about that, and it's probably going to continue to get worse. Now, with these new corporate tax minimums, could we start to see, and will we most likely start to see, a redistribution of wealth? Definitely. And is that going to result in a real significant impact on income inequality? I guess it remains to be seen. All of these economic policies remain to be seen. Trump's tax era cuts, Trump's rebate rules, all of these things are meant to either lessen the cost to lower class, middle class, or increase production amongst business owners. They have to be put into force longer than just a couple years. And right now we keep on swinging so wildly between administrations that we haven't seen really any long sustainable growth strategies put in place for quite some time. So could it work? Yeah, it could. Will we ever find out? I don't know. We'd have to re-elect Joe Biden.
Major reduction in drug costs don't really kick in until next year. If Republicans repeal it, it's going to raise costs on to millions of seniors, and the cost of the federal government
It's not even scheduled to kick in until about 2025. Most of his Inflation Reduction Act, first of all, it's actually probably going to contribute to inflation, but most of this Medicare and health prescription drug savings aren't going to really be expected to start actually saving you money until about 2025.
troops. And I want to say one more.
I don't want to hear it. So yeah, I mean, I agree with him on that last part. It's something that we can definitely make our way out of, and we are improving. I mean, you have to imagine that we literally shut down our economy and then spent an enormous amount of money. We continue to spend an enormous amount of money. And so our deficit was rising out of control, and our spending was rising out of control. The amount of revenue we were taking in with less people working and a smaller labor force, our revenue wasn't looking very great either. And therefore, our GDP looked terrible also. So he's in a time where all of these things are naturally rebounding, and one would very much like to think that most presidents would probably enjoy such a period as far as the data goes, right? Using that data to show that, okay, these are my ideas that have gotten us here. But we all know that that's, not really that true. Most presidents in this position probably would have similar data to point to that looks positive because of how far down we were as an economy not but 2 years ago. So it's basically only up from here. And I think we all know that we are nowhere near as high up as we'd like to go. And so I agree with some of the things that he says. I disagree with a lot of the things that he says because he's basically trying to use a lot of this economic data as a way to back up his positions. And many of his positions I have proven to show are inflationary by design, even though they are literally marked as inflationary reduction bills. And some of his ideas actually are promoting American U.S. made products, and I 100% am on board with that. And let's be honest, a lot of this is not up to him. A lot of people give a lot of attention to him, the president, and the Federal Reserve. And they are one small piece. The Federal Reserve is half of our economic policy. They are only monetary policy. And I will say this too, the heavens come. They are half. The president is even less than half. I mean, he makes very, very limited executive decisions that actually affect our economy. And he does back bills, right? The bills, the fiscal policy, Congress, that is the other half. And that half has been inactive, almost non-existent. And they are so partisan that the things that they do bring to the table, they can barely get passed. And oftentimes they get so reduced and redacted that they really don't do much of anything except usually pad the pockets of special interest groups that are actually paying them to be in Congress. So anyways, that is kind of the latest analysis here. Do with it what you will, but I hope that if anybody has any questions or anything to add, right? I mean, I'm just one man. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment. I'd love to hear any other analysis or any other numbers, stats that you have. It's all in the numbers. The truth is always in the numbers. It's not about opinion.